What's up, guys? I had somebody reach out to me this past week and they asked me a question. And that question has kind of stuck with me. And that usually makes me feel like I need to pursue it a little further. So I thought, hey, why not make a video? Because it is a common question. It is a common thought that I think people have. And so I thought I'd just give you my perspective. I don't know if it means anything or not. But the question was, if God already knows everything, then do we even have free will? So the question is, do we have free will? I believe, yes, we do have this term free will. In my studies of Scripture, I cannot recall a time ever coming upon those words put together as a term, free will. I've never read free will in Scripture. But I do believe that, yes, it is something that we have, because the Bible does speak about choices, right? Joshua said, choose you this day who you're going to serve. And he's like, me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Our choice is to serve the Lord. And so the thought that really just like kind of overwhelmed my mind the other day was, I think the greatest proof that man has free will is you can go back to the Old Testament, and it might sound crazy, but the fact that God gave Moses commandments, that God gave Moses laws, that God gave his creation instructions on things of how to live and the things to do, might actually just be the greatest evidence we have that we actually do have this term free will. Because if he just forced his hands and made the decisions for us, manipulated our mind into doing the things that he wanted us to do, then we wouldn't have free will. But no, he gave us the choice. He said, here is my commandments, here is my truth, here is my instructions. If you will choose to do these things, then you will be blessed and things will go good. But if you choose to go another way, then don't be surprised when there are negative consequences to the choices that you make. And I think the greatest evidence of that is the first commandment that God ever gave Moses. Do you know what that is? He says, I am the Lord your God, who delivered you from the bondage of the Egyptians. And the first commandment that he gave Moses to give to the Hebrew children was, you will have no other gods before me. And do you know that I never heard anyone say what I'm about to say? In all of my time up to before the Lord called me into the ministry, I never heard anybody acknowledge this. I never heard anybody talk about this. I never heard anybody speak about this. Even in my time preaching and teaching and making these videos and pastoring the church, and even in our Bible studies now, like, it was not until I, for myself, dove into the Old Testament. And it took a while until I dove into the Old Testament. Like, this is just kind of like my own little testimony. For the longest time, I really felt like that every time that I would go to study the Old Testament, it was like God would grab me and pull me out and say, no, get back into the New Testament. You need to learn about Jesus. You need to learn about the gospel. You need to learn about the New Testament and get established in this before you get into that. And it wasn't until a year ago, almost to the day a year ago, that it was like God finally opened up the gate and I just started diving into the Old Testament. And I was shocked at what I found. Because as you read about their deliverance from Egypt and their wandering in the wilderness, and even when they get established in the promised land, do you know what the number one stumbling block that the Hebrew children experience over and over and over? King after king after king, the number one backslide, the number one mistake, the number one act of disobedience that they continually indulged themselves in was idolatry. The worship of false gods. They could not let go of the gods of Egypt that they were surrounded with for 400 years while they were in this bondage. And they are constantly worshiping Baal. They are constantly worshiping Moloch. They are constantly building these high places in the temple of God. They are constructing these groves, these wooden images of these idols that they worship. Think about this. As God is on the mountain giving Moses the instruction that you will have no other gods before me, what are the Israelite children doing down at the bottom of the mountain? They are giving all of their gold to Aaron, and he is constructing a golden calf, and they are worshiping this calf. This is a god from Egypt. It is a god of fertility that they are worshiping as God is giving Moses these commandments that you will have no other gods before me. God did not intervene in their decision to worship this golden calf. He did not intervene himself throughout their time in the wilderness and their time of being established in the promised land. He never forced his hand to stop them from worshiping these false gods. They had the choice to make, but he gave them the outline of what the right choice was. That's what the law was. That's what the commandments were. That's what those instructions were. That was God saying, hey, you're going to have a choice to make. And my grace, I'm going to give you the answer to the test. This is the choice that you need to make, and if you make it, you'll be blessed. If you don't, there will be consequences. But I'm not going to force myself. I do not believe that God will ever force his hand and intervene into any of your decision making. But I do believe he will intervene in the situations that are around you, in the people that are around you, the environment that you are in. But he will always influence in a way that will be trying to point you to him and point you to a place of faith and believing in him. But he'll never force you to put your faith in him. That is a choice that you will have to make. And you have all the answers to the test here. You have the proof and the evidence right here. This is the truth. This is the way. This is the life. If you put your faith in Jesus, it's the greatest decision you will ever make. But it is a choice. It is a decision that you have the free will to make. Don't be like the Israelites, always stumbling over idolatry and worshiping all of these false gods, seeking witches and soothsayers before they seek the Lord. Trying to find a medium or a necromancer to speak to the dead. Why would you want to speak to the dead when God is alive, when Jesus is alive? Always dabbling with these familiar spirits, right? These lowercase g gods who are just wandering the earth, doing nothing else but trying to deceive you and to keep you from making the one decision that your free will gives you the opportunity to make, and that is to believe in the one true God. So you got free will, I got free will. God gives every man a measure of faith, but it's up to you to determine where you're going to put that faith. Are you going to put it in him? Are you going to put it in yourself? Are you going to put it in witchcraft, in New Age, in astrology? They were worshiping the moon and the stars in the Old Testament too, guys. God created the moon and the stars, and they are good, and he gave it to us for signs and for seasons, but they are not to be worshipped. There's so much deception out there in the world, and it's all talked about right here. All the answers are right here. The truth is right here. There's only one thing that the world is up against, and it's this right here, because it is the way, it is the truth, and it is the life. And if you choose to put your faith in it, it will radically change your life. It will give you purpose. It will give you meaning. It will give you direction. But you have the free will to make that choice. So I pray that you choose Jesus.